and abroad with the fundamental things that you need for that keyword life. And the multitude, the entire multitude, according to Scripture, is on a path that leads to destruction. That's what the Scripture says.
Does it need interpretation?
No.
When we're going to read in Deuteronomy, first of all, it was written by Moses, an Israelite, again from the tribe of Levi. He wrote this book. Actually, every book in the Bible is written by Israelites.
Okay.
So the Bible is an Israelite book. But let me read from verse 1, chapter 7, Deuteronomy. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hast cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, the Girgashites, and the Amorites, the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. Greater and mightier than thou. So this God is speaking to a specific people. He's saying there's these other nations in this land, greater and mightier than thou. But let's jump. Let's jump because of our time. Go to verse 6.
Yeah.
For thou art an holy people. That's
Who's
it.
The thou?
For
thou art an holy people.
Right.
Who is the
Moses
thou?
wrote this book down. For
Who is the thou?
And he was an Israelite. He was from the tribe of Levi. He was a child of Israel. A man, Israel, who had 12 sons. And this man, Moses, he came from the 3rd son, Levi. So he is speaking to Moses to tell, you see, for thou art an holy people, Israel, this people, Israel, unto the Lord thy God. It's like personal. The Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee. We didn't write this.
No.
We didn't write this. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all the people that are upon the face of the earth. As I continue to read, we're going to go into that point you brought out, Priest Andel.
Yes.
The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any people.
Few.
What? So we're going back to that word. For ye were the fewest of all people.
Interesting.
What? You are the fewest of all people. But because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he has sworn unto your fathers, hath the Lord brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. These people were in bondage. Israel was in bondage. Slaves in bondage. Know, therefore, that the Lord thy God... Now, I love this part, Priest Andel.
Good.
Let me read it again. Know, therefore, that the Lord thy God, Israel, he is God. Wow.
Because at that time, when they were in Egypt, there were more gods than the sand upon the shore.
Oh, man.
More gods than the stars in the heavens.
Yes.
And these people, who are the children of Israel, had all those gods that they saw. And when Moses and that great God of Israel took them through the Red Sea,
yes,
he had to make sure that they understood that this God that did all these wonders and miracles, from the sea turning into blood, from the opening up from the locusts, that God was the God of Israel, and that God is God.
We're reading.
Right? And
he
that God
is God.
is God.
He is God.
And you are not more than the other nations.
Actually, the opposite.
And that's why I chose you. And that's why I chose you, because you were fewest in number.
And why? And you know, sometimes I think about that. That's good you mentioned. How else would he show his power?
How else?
Now, if you have a multitude, everybody in the multitude, sure, we're the biggest army of all,
That's
man.
right.
Look what we did. Look what we accomplished. You're taking out, yeah, look how strong we are. But when you're just this few, and he shows his power, you always say, thank our God that he showed his power. It couldn't be from us.
Couldn't be from the hand of a man.
Couldn't be from man.
It's like the story of David and Goliath we were talking about early today.
Yeah.
I mean, Goliath was a giant. Little David, if little David killed Goliath, it must be the power of God that did that.
This little guy.
Right.
And there's this giant. How? But there has to be a mighty hand in there. Let me continue.
Sure.
Because it's going to go to the point, what does one do to strive to be one of these few?
And to get in that gate.
And to get into that gate. Let's continue to read. Know therefore that the Lord thy God, he is God, the faithful God, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him. And here we go. And keep his commandments
So there's
to 1,000 generations. We're finding out the recipe. Commandments. Those laws, statutes, commandments written in this book.
So there's
Keep
something
them.
that you have to do. In order for one to enter into the gates, there's something that you have to do. God requires something.
That's right.
The God written in this Bible. Let me be specific, right?
Exactly.
The God written in this Bible, which is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, requires something of an individual in order for that person to enter into that gate.
That's right.
And that is to keep the commandments.
Isn't it simple? No, but the recipe is simple.
It's very simple.
What do you want to know the supreme God is saying, he is God.
Yeah.
He is God above all others. The God in this book that has chosen a specific people. Now, this is so simple. Keep my commandments.
So you can't just live freely, do what you want to do, and think that you will enter that gate. That would be foolish to think so. Would that be fair to say?
It's simple.
It's simple. Keep the commandments.
Keep the commandments.
Basically, keep the instructions. That's what that means. That's what commandment means. Keep the instructions that this God has given out so you can be in his good books and enter into that gate.
That's right.
So if you're not keeping his instructions like a good son or daughter would do to their parent,
What happens?
how do you expect your parent to give you treats and rewards?
You get disciplined.
You get disciplined.
You get disciplined. You get sent up to your room. No TV for a month.
You do.
No this or no that. The things that you love the most, take it away.
Yeah.
Can I continue to
Sure
read?
you can.
And repayeth them that hate him to their face.
Oh, wow.
He's mighty. He is powerful.
This is tough. That's a tough scripture.
He's a tough guy. We didn't write this.
No.
And repayeth them that hate him to their face to destroy them. Wow. He will not be slack to him that hateth him. He will repay him to his face. And here is it emphasized again. Thou shalt therefore keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I command thee this day to do them.
It's simple.
I'm going to go to Ecclesiastes.
It's very simple. You do this for me, I'll do this for you. It's not a one-way street. It's not a one-way street. You do this for me, and I'll be sure to do this for you. And that's how we come to, are you one of the few? Are you?
Are you?
Yeah, and that's the question that we all have to ask ourselves.
But do you want to be one of the few? Do you have what it takes to be one of the few? Are you going to claw? Are you going to push aside all this other stuff you're being fed and just go on that road that's wide with everybody else? Don't question, just jump on the bandwagon instead of stop, research, study, and look. Yeah,
Guess what?
Yeah.
I had conversations with some individuals, some colleagues of mine, right? And this is the theory that they have. If a lot of people are doing it, then it must be right.
Must be right.
If a lot, you're saying that you're doing this, but only 2 or 3 people are doing that, something's wrong there. But if a lot of people are doing this, it must be right.
Yes.
But that's not what the scripture is saying.
That's not what this God is saying. That's what man is saying.
That's what man is saying.
But if you want to know this God, who is the supreme God, and you said his name, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, if you want to know this God, and have a chance and be one of these few and have that elite seat,
Yes.
possibly have that elite seat, the formula is easy.
Yeah.
But do you really want to push aside all these other things that are in the way?
Yeah.
Push it all aside, clear the road, there's the door, there's the gate, like you were mentioning, Priest Handel. Now, get in, now, I want to go deeper, and I want to continue through that door. It's so simple, but yet it's not so simple.
No.
I'm going to read Ecclesiastes, which was written by Solomon.
And who was
And
he?
Solomon, again, is an Israelite.
So, based
Do we
on
see a
everything,
consistency here?
Yeah, there is a consistency.
Okay.
And based on what's been happening here, it's fair to say that from Genesis to Revelation,
Yes.
written by Israelites,
Yes.
for Israelites,
Yes.
and about Israelites.
Yes.
So, when we go back to that gate, as we were discussing in the early scripture,
Yeah, that's a great word.
you have to follow in the path of an Israelite. If an Israelite is telling you, which is Moses, Moses is the lawgiver. He is the
Did you see the
lawgiver.
movie, The 10 Commandments? How many of us would sit around
Unreal.
and see that movie? Like there's Moses, this man, Moses, the parting of the sea and all that might and power shown. And who was this man? Who was Solomon? When one reads this and they say, okay, Ecclesiastes, Solomon, he wrote this. Let me research Solomon.
How did he live?
How did he live?
he
What was
pray?
his culture, his way of life?
What did he do? What did Moses do? How did he live?
walk?
How did he walk?
Yeah.
How did he dress?
Yeah.
I want to be like these guys.
Yeah.
Who were these guys?
Who are these guys?
Israelites.
And they all served the same God.
The same God.
They served the same God, the famous one, Jesus the Christ. Who was he? This famous man. Who was Paul? A Benjamite. Who was this man? John, who wrote the book of Revelations, which we're going to, the time goes quickly here, hopefully we'll get to. John, who was this man? Find out, research, and all goes back to being an Israelite.
Yeah.
Well, let me read this.
Yeah.
This is chapter 12, again, for those who are following it at home, Ecclesiastes 12. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter.
Well, we could sum it up here if we wanted to.
Yeah,
if we wanted to, we could sum it up here.
Do you need interpretation? Let's hear the conclusion. This is the whole thing in a nutshell. Let's put it in a nutshell. Fear God. Fear this God. It's talking this God in this book, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment. Judgment, something can be scary. That word is scary. Into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. But the whole duty of man, fear God and keep
His
the commandments. It's so simple. This is the gate, and this is the path that a few find.
A few find.
A few find.
I wonder why that is so, Elder Kashrilli.
A few find.
When you look at it, the Bible is one of the most published in terms of books in the world.
Most
in the world.
widely read.
Right. And you would wonder why.
You can pick one up in a hotel room, and you can just pick one up and bring it home.
You can. But why then only a few find what you're reading today and what you're explaining? Why only a few would keep the commandments, and some would say, we don't have to keep the commandments? Why?
That's a good question.
That is a question, and that's something that we all have to think about. Why is it so that only a few would find this narrow path? And it's all here for everyone to see from Genesis to Revelation.
This is just some, do people generally listen to man, or they really want to listen to what God has to say? Are they putting man ahead of the supreme God? Because he says, not only he is God, he is God.
That's right.
Above all. Do you really want to have a relationship with this God? I'm going to read something else here. This I love, again, this scripture. This scripture, I'm going to 1 Peter We're going back to the New Testament. We call it the Second Testament because there's no difference from the Old and New. But that's another subject matter.
Yeah.
Let me read here. 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 17 and 18. For the time has come that, there's that word judgment again. Yeah. For the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, who's us? Israelites. At us. What shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? This is a question. It begins with us. Then how about the others? Let me read. Yeah. And if the righteous... This is the part that gets me, Priest Andel. And if the righteous scarcely be saved.
Scarcely?
The righteous scarcely be saved. Again, we did not write this. I hope everyone is following it at home. We read the King James Version.
Yeah.
And if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear?
There's a couple key words that you've mentioned. One of it is judgment.
Oh, yeah.
For one to be judged, he has to be judged according to some kind of a rule book. If you go to court and a judge is there, he's obviously going to judge you according to the law of the land.
Of the land.
The law of the land.
That's right.
So if there's judgment, and this God is the ultimate judge,
yes,
there has to be some law that he would judge every human being on.
Base his judgment on.
So therefore, if the multitude or that road that many find, and those many are saying there's no law, how then is this great judge going to do what he has to do at the end of time? That's the first thing we got to put out there.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Then you've mentioned, not you, I'm sorry, Peter has mentioned, scarcely.
The righteous.
The righteous.
The righteous.
Scarcely.
I'm not talking about terrible stuff here. It's righteous scarcely. Wow.
This is tough.
It's tough.
This is tough. So that means this narrow path is hilly and gully with lots of stumbling blocks. And you've got to go through all of that. And if you reach the end, then you have a chance of being saved. Then you got a chance.
There's a chance.
The opportunity of being saved.
Priest Andel, our time is flying. I want to go to the book of Revelation. You know, when I first picked up the Bible, you know,
Perfect.
That was the first book I read. But how can you begin at the end and then understand this book?
That's true.
You must begin at the beginning, read right through, get to the end. Now I understand. But if I'm going to start with Revelation and go, I just want to know what's going to happen.
Most people do that.
That's what I did. When I first picked up a Bible, that's what I did.
You're not going to go to the last chapter of a novel and understand what happened with the characters.
You're going to fail the exam.
You're going to fail the exam. The Bible is the same way. You have to start from the beginning and understand the characters, understand the role they played. So when you get to the end, which is the credits, Revelation, the credits, you understand what happened in between. It'll make perfect sense.
Make perfect sense. I want to read from the book of Revelation, chapter 7. I'm going to read verse 4. And I heard the number of them which were sealed. And there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel.
No surprise to me.
No surprise.
No surprise.
But if your math is good, there's 12 tribes, 12,000 from each tribe, times 12, you get 144,000 sealed. This is the book of Revelations. I'm going to go to chapter 21.
So this is the end.
This is the end. This is chapter 21, the last two chapters.
To see who lives happily ever after.
This is it.
And you fast forward your DVD movie. You want to see who lives happily ever after.
And you know what? And you get a lot more of this at the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. You come out, and these lessons are, this is above riches and gold of this earth. Let me read. And I saw, chapter 21, verse 1, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, an Israelite, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, adorned for her husband. I'm going to jump to verse 10. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. This is not the present earth here. Having the glory of God, and her light was like unto a stone with precious, even a jasper stone, clear as crystal. And here we go to the gate. And had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and the names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. The name of the gate, 12 tribes of the children of Israel. So can you get in through the gate? Who's at the gate? Who's at this gate? The children of Israel.
12 gates.
12 gates. 12 sons of Jacob. From Reuben to Benjamin. And here it is, right at the end, talking about this coming down.
This is it. This is the final conclusion. Anyone wants to find out the final conclusion of life, Revelation tells you who good guys, who are the bad guys, who live happily ever after, who don't live happily ever after. It's all written. And here it is, the gates have Israel all over them.
Are you one of the few? Do you want to be one of the few? Do you have what it takes to be one of the few? This has been a treat, Christian.
Oh, it has been.
The time just flies.
Oh, it truly has been.
It's been really, really fun.